Hey guys, in this week's episode, we are talking about Barbarian, but before that, we're talking Scream 5 and X/Pearl from Ty West. So join us!
Hello and welcome to the Casual Cinecast, powered by Cinelinx. My name is Chris, and with me as always is a man who I wonder, what is the craziest, Airbnb/hotel story? Mike, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you. And my craziest Airbnb/hotel story. One time I was in an Airbnb, A-frame house out in the woods.
Ew.
And there was a fire pit, and I used the fire pit, and then I spent the entire night worried. Even though I made sure to put out the fire, I was still worried I didn't put out the fire good enough, so I didn't sleep very good.
Chilling.
I know. It's a very upsetting night.
Also with us, same question for you, Justin. How are you doing, and what's your craziest Airbnb/hotel story?
I'm doing well. I don't know if I have crazy stories, but maybe some.
Not like mine.
Yeah, not like Mike's. I mean,
Can't get as crazy as Mike's.
yeah, that one's blood curdling, honestly.
Yeah.
But one time my wife and I stayed at an Airbnb, and it was just a guest room in someone's house, and we walked in and it smelled bad, like that sort of death-like smell, and we were like, what's going on? And then we met the lady that owned the house, and she showed us around, and she was like, don't worry, it smells a little funny, but it's because about a week ago I discovered that a rat or an animal had somehow gotten to the walls and died, and we removed it, but the smell's still around. So
That's suspicious.
yeah, so my wife was quite concerned that we were going to be chopped up and put into the walls at some point during our stay. Didn't happen, obviously, but it was a little creepy.
It's touch and go there for a second.
Yeah, but Chris, I guess we'll turn the question back around on you. What's your craziest story?
Oh, well, thank you for asking. This is the real reason why I asked the question, because I have a crazy story. So I was staying at a hotel, and it was kind of like a cheap hotel, and I stayed for one night, left, and then came back, and my key card worked, and so I went into the hotel, was half asleep, and all of a sudden, two people walked into my hotel room, who I guess had also got the room rented out to them. But you know how you're half asleep, and you wake up, and you just don't know what's real and what's not. And I just remember laying there and being like, what just happened? Did I imagine that? As they walked in, they saw somebody was in the bed. It was a couple too, so they were probably had a rude awakening as well. But so I was just like, what happened? And then I went down, and it turned out that they didn't change my key card, but I wasn't supposed to be in that room because I hadn't been charged for the second night. So and so they rented out my room to somebody else, which really I wasn't supposed to be there in the first place, but I didn't know that. So and I should have changed my key card. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're the scary part of this story.
No! Yeah, well, yeah, I'm the Skarsgård in this.
That's right.
All right.
Yeah, kind of, but we can't go into more details because...
Yeah, that's about all the details we can give away.
What an onion. Okay. All right. If this is your first time listening, normally we like to start off every episode in a section called News on the March, where we talk about film and TV news, but realistically, usually always just the movies and TV that we specifically have been watching. Then we move into our feature review. This week, like we discussed, we are just talking about Barbarian.
Yes, and one of the barbaric things we do here on the Casual Cinecast is every other week we put out a Casually Criterion episode, pretty regularly. Last one wasn't, okay, we'll lie a little bit. But so one of the things we like to do in these episodes is we pick a poll, and then we put it out on the interwebs, mainly Twitter. And Elon Musk will choose what our new movie will be. No, that's not true. You guys get to choose.
I mean, he can vote.
Yeah, he can vote if he wants, but he's only one vote.
as far as we know.
Yeah, unless he gives us Teslas. Like, I would take a Tesla. I'm like morally conflicted about Elon Musk, but I would take a Tesla.
At this point, I'd be kind of embarrassed to drive a Tesla. No offense to Tesla drivers out there, but it doesn't have the prestige it once did anymore, I don't think.
Sure. I'd still take one, though.
Yeah, I mean, who am I kidding?
Anyways, last poll we did was high and low one. Congratulations to me, even though I missed that episode. I was sick. And then we've just put out a new poll. And gentlemen, who wants to tell us what won that poll?
Mike?
Okay. So Justin and I did the episode on high and low. We each chose a film. We even chose one for Chris. The theme was blind spots. Basically just movies that we haven't seen. Justin chose Blue as the Warmest Color. I chose My Own Private Idaho. And Chris was chosen Tree of Life.
Yep.
Because you still haven't seen it, right? I'm correct in that?
Right. It is on my list for this year, so I need to watch it by the end of the year. But
yeah, so Justin made an executive decision on the show and said that was Chris's choice. And it turns out My Own Private Idaho wins with 41.2% of the vote.
Your own My Own Private Idaho?
Yep. And then it looks like the other two were tied with 29.4%. So, So it looks like my blind spot will be filled.
Yeah. Well, it's not super like runaway, so it could be done. It's going to be a pretty barbaric fight to the death, it seems like. That's what's barbaric about it, right?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for tying that back in
You're
to
welcome.
the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah, and as Chris said earlier, we put that poll out on our Twitter account, so you can follow us there at Casual Cinecast to stay up to date and vote every time we put a poll out. You can message us on there. You can send questions, topics, whatever you want to that account or to casualcinemedia@gmail.com. And then, of course, if you haven't done so already, you like the show, you want to help other people find it, go onto iTunes, go onto whatever platform you listen to podcasts on, and give us a 5-star, 10-star review, thumbs up, subscribe, all that. Every bit of it.
Mm-hmm. All right, and with that, are we ready to get into News on the March?
Mm-hmm.
News on the March!
All right, so the first thing on the agenda today is a film that I have not seen. I am still stuck on Scream 3, have not gotten past it yet, but I will. But Scream 5 is something that you guys have both seen. So, Chris, why don't you get us started?
Yeah, you got to catch up. I'm pretty sure Scream 6 comes out at like January or February of next year as well. So, it's a never-ending cycle. Wow. So you're going to have to catch up soon.
I'm currently on the extended version of Return of the King. So,
yeah. So you'll be
I've got an hour left in that.
So this is one of the things, somebody reached out to us. Jerry reached out to us on Twitter, a friend of the pod. As much as we have friends of the pod. But he reached out and he was just curious about what we thought about Scream 5, or it's just called Scream, really, because it's kind of takes after the Halloween.
Call it the fifth Scream.
Yeah, the Halloween pattern. Anyway, so
what was that?
The Halloween pattern, because like you have Halloween, and then they did the second one.
No,
it's
I
like
got it.
Okay. Anyways, so Justin, you've seen this most recently. You saw this for like Halloween. I saw this in the theater, but remind me, what are your thoughts, and kind of remind me about the film?
Yeah, so I guess keeping with the sort of like reboot / sequel sort of like hybrid that we have.
Like a sequel.
Yeah, whatever it is. But those things that we have lately, that's basically sort of what Scream 5 is. Like, and it plays a lot, in the way that the Scream films are very meta. It plays a lot with its own formula. Like it kind of packages itself as a reboot, but also a sequel, because some of the legacy characters show up and have small parts to play, but they're certainly not the main characters still. And
you wouldn't know that from the advertising.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, they're in there. Don't get me wrong. They're not just like cameo scenes, there is like important, I guess, as Jamie Lee Curtis, I guess, is in the most recent like Halloween reboots, but maybe a little less screen time. But anyways, it's hard to like really describe the movie, and it's one of the things that kind of colors my thoughts on it is that I enjoy the movie, and I thought it was entertaining and fun, and I enjoy that Scream and basically all of the subsequent Screams have had this sort of like meta commentary on the horror film in general, you know, where like the characters always know the rules of the horror movie and how to survive, but like despite that they make wrong choices anyways, and that's kind of the fun of the movie. But this one is such a like a reboot / sequel that many of the beats are the same or feel the same as Scream, and it even makes that like kind of a point, right? That it's essentially the same movie as Scream. And without getting too spoilery about it, like it's a weird movie because it's fun and it's entertaining to do this, but at the same time they're giving us essentially the same movie again. So like the fun part is we're seeing these new characters live out this plot with the knowledge of this plot having already happened, correct? Right? Because in the Scream world, we have the movie Stab that they've made, which is based on a book written about the events of the original Scream movie. So like,
go
ahead.
Well, they were kind of filming, I think Stab was being filmed in Scream 2.
Stab had come out in Scream 2. Scream 3,
that is correct.
Stab 2 was being filmed. Like I think the first Scream 2 opens up with the first Stab movie.
Yeah.
Right?
That's the most recent one that I have completed in this series, and yes, I can confirm that.
Yeah, I think they're filming Stab 2 or 3 and Scream 3. And Jay and Silent Bob show up.
Yep, I remember that. That's like that's the worst thing about that movie that I think that I remember.
It is the jumping of the shark.
It is.
But when Scream 3 first came out.
But I think what does kind of keep working about the Scream movies is that, especially when they're so far apart being released, like I'm a little skeptical about this one that's coming out next year. But what's worked for me when they've been kind of so far apart between like Scream 4 and 5, or between like Scream 3 to Scream 4, then to Scream 5, there's been enough years that we kind of have a new generation of young people in the film who have grown up on horror movies. You know, like in this film, they mention The Babadook and Knives Out and Hereditary, right?
Yeah, so, elevated horror.
Is Knives Out a horror movie?
No,
they mention Ryan Johnson.
Yeah, I guess that's not a horror movie, but they mention like modern movies, and there's always this new sort of language that they can be meta about in regards to horror films and sequels and reboots and stuff. And to me, that's super fun, and I really enjoyed that about this movie. But in some ways, it kind of felt like waiting for the next clever like dialogue or scene that winks at the camera and has fun more than being into the story, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think Scream 5 is the one that like and probably this is the thing I should have noticed previous to Scream 5, but about how like slasher films are essentially kind of like whodunits, depending on the slasher film. But, you know, like you spend, especially like a movie like Scream 5, where you're like, I don't know who's the killer here, you know? And I enjoyed that aspect of Scream 5, the whodunit part of it, you know? Mm-hmm. The meta commentary about like fandom and, you know, especially like toxic fandom. It kind of actually reminds me a little bit of She-Hulk. I mean, there's not the masculinity part of it, but they are certainly... You know, that's why Ryan Johnson gets mentioned, because there are people... Yeah, toxic fandom. There are people in this movie that are very upset about the Stab movies. And so that's kind of what the commentary is. In world, it's commenting about like toxic fandom and stuff. And I really enjoyed that part of it and that meta commentary. And then, you know, on top of that, I think that I enjoyed the whodunit part of it.
That sounds like, as someone who hasn't seen this yet, a welcome element to a slasher film.
Yeah.
Which part? The whodunit part or the...
Yeah, I can't think of many whodunits, and not even in like the previous 2 Screams that I've seen recently.
Sure. I thought Bodies, Bodies, Bodies was similar to that. It had that whodunit element.
I think the Scream movies have developed that whodunitness when we know that the killer is going to be someone that we've met.
That you've seen.
Yeah. Because that's the formula, So you just have to kind of figure out which one it is, and they kind of change it up enough between each one that it's never like, it's not always, the best friend or, so-and-so's mother or whatever,
The boyfriend and
yeah. So that has been developed just like in that knowledge of previous Scream films, right?
That's true. I guess I'm only 2 in, so I haven't really.
Yeah.
I guess I haven't seen a bulk of the series yet.
Yeah. But I think that's why these movies are the best. And what I like, even 3, which isn't great, I enjoyed some of the meta-ness of it, but especially like 4 and 5, they're really leaning into that. And
I heard,
and I think that's where it's at its best.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I had a good time. It probably won't be in my top 10 of the year, but it was certainly a good time. It was a lot of fun, is what I would say. So I enjoyed it. And I recommend, I think Mike will enjoy it too. So
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So there you go, Jerry. I hope you're happy.
Yeah. So moving on, if there's nothing else.
Yeah, the thing that kind of ties these two things together is Jenny Ortega too. She was really good in Scream 5.
Oh, yeah, she is.
And she is also in X.
Yeah, which we're talking about next. Let's just go there. Mike, you hadn't seen Scream 5, so you didn't talk much, but do you want to kick us off talking about X and Pearl?
Sure, yeah. So I recently just saw Pearl, which I'm sure we'll talk about later after we talk a little bit about X, but I saw X, I think, not that long ago. I think a couple weeks ago. So it's pretty fresh in my mind. I actually had forgotten about that movie that had come out earlier this year, and I'd heard such good things about Pearl that I kind of wanted to prepare for it, so I decided to watch it, and it's pretty good. I enjoy it. It's a well-made, kind of indie horror movie.
COVID at that
the location allows them to kind of tell the story on a budget, which is fun, and it works as like an isolation element, right? And so you get this fun little slasher film about people in the 70s wanting to go film a porno, basically.
An adult film.
So there's a little bit of Boogie Nights meets
Texas
a Scream. There you go.
Yeah, I think Texas Chainsaw Massacre is the vibe that I get.
There you most.
Go. Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, as a result, you get this fun little movie, which I didn't love, but I think is solid. And I think after having seen Pearl, it kind of makes me want to go back and possibly look at X with even kinder eyes, I guess I should say. But
because you liked Pearl
more,
or just like the way that it maybe feels out?
Yeah, I definitely like Pearl more, for sure. But they're not the same kind of horror. And I know you guys still need to see it, so I won't go too much more into it, but I think maybe it's not like a slasher traditional horror movie the same way X is, but it is good, and I think adds layers to X and makes it better in retrospect, in my opinion. But Justin, you just most recently watched X, so why don't you tell us your thoughts?
Yeah. So I watched this, I think with Halloween, the weekend before Halloween, and then Monday night being Halloween, watched a bunch of horror films back to back. So I think I was just maybe in the right mindset for this movie, but also I was intrigued because of Ty West, the director.
Mm-hmm.
I have seen one of his other films, House of the Devil, a couple of times, and I think that's a pretty fantastic horror movie. Have you guys seen that one?
I've not.
No, I've actually only seen one of his previous films, and it's a movie that I think a lot of people are split on, called The Innkeepers.
Yeah, I want to see that one too. But it was split. Did you like that one?
Yeah, I like X and Pearl better, but Innkeepers was pretty good.
Yeah. I'm not sure if I like X more than I like House of the Devil. House of the Devil is this really great homage to 70s horror, like an 80s, early 80s horror that's like really subdued and more about vibes than like jump scares. It's a bit more, Rosemary's Baby than it is, some modern exorcist movie. Right? Or exorcism movie. But X, I love the vibe of it. Like, I think this guy just has such a good ability to capture the vibe and the tone of classic horror, like, and really dive into what makes those classic horror films work. Like, I think House of the Devil's a bit more, Rosemary's Baby / Grindhouse type movie, and he really nails that tone. And in this one, to me, it's that Texas Chainsaw Massacre tone. Mm-hmm. And combined with like the 70s period, like I just really enjoyed like living in the world that he makes, like the aesthetic world, and having that suspense that he can build up while like the way everything looks in the frame of the camera is just like kind of nostalgic in terms of making me think of past horror films that I love,
Yeah, he's got an eye for like his films actually feel like gritty, like old films do, like a little like washed out color-wise sometimes. I don't know. He seems to understand that aesthetic without it seeming like a gimmick. Like it doesn't feel like when you put on like Machete by Robert Rodriguez or like Planet Terror, and it's like a little too corny and a little too
it's a little too in
like
your face.
Yeah, it's too like on the nose a little bit. Like Ty West has a way to make it pay homage to old films in feeling in a more authentic way than a lot of contemporary directors trying to do that kind of thing do. Yeah. I think
sometimes it's like if you get it kind of vibe or like homage, mm-hmm. right? And if you don't, that's okay.
It's a more subtle hint than something like Planet Terror.
But back to X specifically, I guess story-wise, this was surprising to me. I didn't expect it to go some of the places that it did, and to me, it had this overall theme, and I don't think it's spoilery, but this sort of overall theme of this sort, and maybe I'm applying it because I live in Texas, but this sort of Southern Christian, morally outraged type person, but kind of attributing that moral outrage to jealousy and jealousy of youth and beauty. And to me, that kind of felt like the thesis of the film. And I appreciated that it had something to say that's kind of bold like that. And I don't know if you guys feel the same way about that thesis, but that was just kind of that, it had that little extra something that I enjoyed beyond just like the gory slasherness and the vibes. Because I think as a slasher film, it's pretty on par with like good ones. It's not, maybe not anything super like spectacular or original, but the packaging of the vibe and having that sort of like messaging about, religious outrage towards sexuality, I enjoyed.
Yeah. But I would like to hear from Chris first, but I would say I will be interested to see what you think after Pearl.
Cool. Chris?
Yeah, I liked X. I think I'm just going to reiterate what a lot of you guys said. I'm just going to agree with. I think kind of where it hung up for me is there's like a little bit in the middle where the kills kind of got a little boring. Like I felt like we knew that who we were going to have to kill next, and I just felt a little sag there. I know that I have friends that love this movie, and so maybe I'm not a horror movie guy, or maybe I am, but I just felt like there's a little bit of extra sag there in the middle with some of the kills. But I agree with you. I do think that they're trying to say things that are interesting and cool. I know Pearl will take it in a new direction, which is fun as well. I love the idea that they kind of shot these back to back, and
they're filming the third installment either now or very shortly.
Yeah, that's real exciting too. Is that one got Mia Goth in it as well?
Mm-hmm.
Probably so.
It's about one of the characters in X.
Oh, is Mia Goth not in it then?
It's called Maxine with 3 X's to spell Maxine.
Okay. Yeah, the pornography trilogy. But yeah, so I'm excited about all of them. As an overall whole, I think this is a really great idea as far as releasing, making and releasing 3 films very close to each other, like...
Well, apparently Pearl was greenlit either before or at the same time. Because,
I think they shot it at the same time.
They shot them like back to back, I think.
Yeah, it was because I'm pretty sure X is a COVID movie. Like they shot it during COVID. And that's why it is so isolated. I mean, it works for the movie as well, but it's isolated. There's not very many people in it, so it works very well. I can't speak to Pearl. I don't know if there's more people in Pearl or not.
No, actually, Pearl kind of feels very sparse too, but there's actually an excuse. Pearl takes place in 1918 when the massive Spanish flu, quote Spanish flu, was going around.
Basically,
and so it's actually like woven into the plot.
That's awesome. Yeah. Cool. Well, I enjoyed it, and I'm very excited to watch Pearl. I just haven't gotten around to it yet.
I won't go into too much about it because I want you guys to go in as fresh as possible. But I think what is so cool about what Pearl does, and because I agree with you, some of X felt a little meandering in the middle, right? There's like a swamp subplot,
yeah,
and stuff like that. I think Pearl will add more context to the farm,
right?
So I think it just feels more like planned and complete, and they scratch each other's back in a way that I think feels really nice and elevates both of them.
I'm excited to see how Maxine adds to it.
Yeah, Maxine is the one I'm really interested in now because I don't know, but anyways, I think what everyone should take away from this conversation is that Mia Goth is awesome.
Yeah, she's real good in X.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's great. I think everybody's good. It was interesting seeing Brittany Snow.
Oh yeah,
yeah, it's good seeing her again.
Yeah, I mean, I see her kind of regularly because my wife watches the Hallmark Channel.
Okay, well, I haven't seen her in like a decade or more.
She's in quite a few of those movies, and that's kind of how I'm used to seeing her now. When those movies are pretty tame and family friendly and PG, and so like seeing her in this. Was a departure from how I'm used to seeing her in recent times, right? And
sure,
so
yeah,
that was pretty fun. And like you said, Chris, Jenna Ortega, I think everybody's pretty good in this. It took me a while to realize that, not even realize, but I guess I was looking it up, but that Mia Goth was playing Pearl in this
multiple characters.
Yeah. Didn't realize that.
Yeah. Which is, I guess, a good thing.
That's how you save money.
Also, it wouldn't take you out of it by being like, oh, I see what's going on here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else we want to talk about? It's hard to really get into specifics because we don't want to get into spoilers, and you guys have only seen half of them.
True.
I'm excited. We'll have to talk more about it as a whole when Maxine comes out. We'll probably have to do an episode and just kind of talk about it as a whole.
Yeah, we'll do like a deep review of the whole trilogy or something.
Yeah,
that'd be good.
Okay, I'm down.
Deal.
Cool. All right. So are we ready to get into the main event?
Yes.
Let's do it.
All right. Here we go. Our review of Barbarian coming at you. Starting now. Here we go.
Oh, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
This is 476 Barbary, right?
Yeah, I'm renting this place.
No, I booked it a month ago.
Are you sure you have the right place?
Yeah. What am I supposed to do?
Why don't you come inside and we'll call these idiots. Why don't you just crash here?
Oh, no.
I don't know if you got a great look at this neighborhood, but I don't think you should be out there by yourself. It's dry and there's a lock on the door. By the way, I'm Keith.
Tess.
You take the bedroom and I'll sleep out here on the couch.
God.
All right, so as always with our newer films, we will be doing a spoiler-free section up front. We'll be talking about our general thoughts on Barbarian without giving away any major spoilers or anything that's not in the trailer, as difficult as that may be for this film. And we'll give you a warning, play a bumper, so that you have plenty of time to pause the podcast before we get into spoilers, and then you can go watch Barbarian, come back, and finish listening to the episode.
That's right. So Barbarian was directed by Zach Kreger, and it stars Georgina Campbell, Bill Skarsgård, and Justin Long. The IMDb synopsis says a woman staying at an Airbnb discovers that the house she has rented is not what it seems.
Ooh. That's why our question was what it was earlier, listener.
That's the tie-in.
Yep.
See, it's all thought out in advance.
What if I haven't seen the trailer? How do I know what I can spoil?
Yeah, I actually haven't seen the trailer now that I think about it.
Yeah.
Oops.
But I guess we should just go with would you want this spoiled for you thing.
Yeah. I
It's
don't
going to
think
be a very short, non-spoiler section.
the trailers that I have seen did not spoil anything that I was upset about being spoiled. So we'll save it that.
Okay.
All right.
Vague enough to make me worried, but yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so who wants to get us started? I watched this last week, so I will pass it to someone who watched it more recently, and that person is Chris. No, Chris, you've seen this first, right?
Well, I rewatched it last night. I did see it in theaters.
Well, there you go. Then you've seen it most recently.
Yeah. I saw it long enough that I needed a refresher.
So you've seen it both most recently and the
furthest
furthest
away.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm the,
So you're the expert.
Alpha and the Omega.
Yeah, absolutely the expert.
Yes. Yeah, I like this movie a lot. I'm thrilled that we are going to get to talk about it. It's, we talked about Halloween Ends. That was my last episode to be on. And I like that movie all right. This movie I love, Okay. I think that this movie's real great. It's hard to talk about much of it without giving anything away, but suffice it to say, it's just about Airbnb mix-up, and it goes to crazy places from there. I think the casting is really great in this. The structure of the movie is really good, and the acting's really good. And I think that's all I can say without spoiling anything.
Let me ask you. Let me ask you real quick. The first time you saw this was in a crowded theater, right?
No, I saw it like at 1:00 in the afternoon, like on my day off.
Bummer. Okay, I was about to say, how did this play with an audience? Because
there's like 5 people, and I don't think there was much noise. So yeah, it was as if I'd watched it by myself.
My wife made a lot of noise while we watched it.
That's cool.
Very vocal, vocally.
All right.
WTFing.
WTF? Did she say that out loud? She's like, WTF.
She didn't abbreviate.
She says,
it.
I am WTFing right now.
Yeah.
I am totally WTFing. This is cray.
Okay. Justin, tell us what you and your wife thought about this film.
Yeah. Well, we watched it a few days ago, and I think we both liked it. She loved it. She can't stop raving about it. She's super into it, and I am close to, but maybe just slightly underneath that. Like, I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. I don't have many complaints about it, if any. Yeah, I don't know. If I have complaints, I can't make them until spoilers anyways, but
Sure.
I'll see if I do.
I think, well, maybe I should say this after Mike talks, but I think what I would say is this is a movie, just watch it. I recommend it. If you rent it, I'll give you your money back if you don't like the film.
Yeah,
You heard it here.
Yeah, write into us and give me your bank account information, and I'll wire it to you.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's just best, if you haven't seen it yet, go watch it. It's an hour and a half. It's short. It's simple. Just watch it. I think it's worthwhile. Mike, did you like this movie, and do you recommend, or do you agree with my recommendation?
Yes, I do like this movie. I don't know that I love it as much as like everyone else in the world seems to be loving this movie, but I do think it is a very good movie. It's fun. The less you know about it, the better. I'm glad I didn't really watch a trailer. I am a little bummed, though, that the expectation was set up because the word of mouth was so much like, don't watch anything. You know,
it's hard to live up to that. Like,
right,
the
it's
twist
a little
wasn't
hard to live
big.
up to that.
Yeah.
But I was never bored, and I had a really good time with this movie. So, yeah, I think that's 3 solid recommends. I think we should just get into spoilers because
we're
does
walking in
anyone
a
have anything
landmine.
first before we do that?
I mean, the only things I think I would say is just that I do feel that the movie is pretty like masterfully shot in terms of building suspense and the way that the camera is framed. Like I had a lot of fun. Like it's one of those movies where you're constantly looking in other places. Like you're constantly looking like in the empty space of the frame.
Yeah.
And searching for things. And I think that's done intentionally, like giving you space in the frame and like odd framing to where like you can just be constantly engaged with this movie. And there's some other really visually interesting choices that I don't know. I think initially felt like they kind of rubbed me as like some choices just to make weird choices. But as the movie was over and I was kind of reflecting and like ultimately like really enjoying it, I think I get more accepting of those as like actually like interesting choices or like choices that I appreciate, as opposed to early in the movie or at certain parts when they happened, I was like, I'm not sure about this choice. I think it's weird. So like it does do some interesting different things, maybe some things that I wouldn't say I haven't seen before, but I'm not sure I've seen them done in a horror movie or quite like this. But anyways.
Okay. Yeah.
The other thing, sorry, but the guy that directed this film is from The Whitest Kids You Know, or The Whitest People You Know.
Whitest Kids.
Like a comedy group, Whitest Kids.
Yeah.
Do we think comedy is horror is a natural progression of comedy? Like with Jordan Peele and then this guy. Because I think both of their films, especially their initial films, are pretty great. I do find that an interesting, like, because I think there's a timing in comedy that you also find in horror. Like you have to have this timing, you know? Mm-hmm. And so I wonder if the timing of comedy kind of translates to horror as well. So
yeah,
what do you guys think?
I'm curious if it's a timing thing specifically, or if it's kind of the same principle of, you know, in order to make someone cry, you have to be able to make them laugh. Or like if you make someone laugh first, then hit them with the tearjerker moment, like you can really get them, you know?
Yeah.
And I think both with Jordan Peele's movies and with this one, they, in the build-up, there's a lot of, you know, kind of wry humor and things to enjoy. And there's an ability to make us like characters and get attached to characters. Mm-hmm. That I think comes from comedy.
That makes sense.
Well, in my eyes, if you can do comedy, you're equipped to do pretty much anything else.
Yeah, comedy's hard.
That's true. Yeah.
Comedy, to be genuinely funny, like a genuinely funny person, that's a hard thing to do. And if you can consistently make like most people laugh, then you could probably get them to feel anything. Because getting someone to laugh is like the hardest thing to do. In my
I wouldn't
eyes.
know.
I know you wouldn't.
Yeah, you're still trying to figure it out, right?
I know. It's because I make people laugh all the time.
Oh, I thought you meant because you hadn't done it.
Not yet. One day I'll make somebody laugh.
Actually, I think you made me laugh out loud pretty hard earlier in this episode, so you'll have to go back and
Good
listen.
job, me.
Well, so now you know you can make him scared. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Are we ready for spoilers now?
Let's do it.
Yes.
Okay. Let's do that.
No, I guess Rosebud is just a piece in a jigsaw puzzle.
Any orange cigarettes you got up there? I'll tell you all about it.
Things are going to start happening to me now.
And here we go.
So now that I think about it, Justin Long was in the trailer. And I think once the first half of the movie had gone on for a while, I realized that we were probably going to get a second half of the movie that was more Justin Long focused. But he's only in like one shot briefly. Like it's like him kind of reaching out of the darkness and you see his face and he's scared like up against a wall in the tunnel. But anyways.
I saw a screen cap of the trailer and it's him in the car driving.
The singing section of it?
Oh.
I think so. I mean, I didn't watch the trailer, but I recognize that screen cap of him in the car driving from this movie.
Okay.
So there's at least a version of the trailer where it shows him driving.
Okay. Maybe I didn't see that one. Maybe I saw like early on trailers in theaters. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. I think maybe a place to start with the film, and something we couldn't mention before, is the structure of the film. You know, it's very psycho structured.
Yeah,
and
very.
That's one of the things that, you know, is really enjoyable, especially to the horror movie fan who's familiar with things like Psycho, and that structure kind of paying homage to that.
Although this movie kind of has its cake and eats it too, because it switches main characters and then switches back again, kind of.
Yeah, then it becomes both.
Yeah.
Yeah. Instead of following one and then following another, and that's it. It's not quite like, you know, how Death Proof kind of does it.
Right.
Yeah. It's a bit more A story and then B story, and then they come together.
Yeah, yeah. So, did you have a place where you wanted to start?
That was where I started.
Let's start with
Okay. Well, I mentioned earlier that I have a critique of this movie.
Yeah, let's start there.
So I just want to kind of get that out of the way first, because it's really only one that may extend on to other things. But my main thing is, first of all, the first 2/3 of this movie is, like, in my opinion, masterful. Like, the way it builds suspense, the way it switches characters, the way it'll flash back in time and have like a weird camera angle, you know?
Yeah, the super wide angle lenses.
Yeah, the super wide angle lens, and like the way like you see this dude stalking girls, like all that is like filmed and executed just really, really well. I think where this movie, I don't want to say lost me, because it never lost me, but where I was like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing, is basically once the thing gets hit by the car, the lady, and then after that she's busting through walls and ripping people's arms off, and she basically just becomes a monster. And it's kind of like supernatural after that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of liked it better before she was so clearly defined as like a superhuman who can like bust through a water tower and like jump off of a water tower and live. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? It was scarier when it was just a lady.
There is a moment in this film, in that section, where the homeless guy's like, she's like, "Are you sure we're safe here?" And the homeless guy's like, "Absolutely, we're safe here. There's no way that anybody could ever come in here. I've been here for 10 years." And I remember in the theater thinking, oh, like she's going to bust through right now. And then she did. And then she ripped off his arm. And while you're right, it's supernatural, and it doesn't, that's where the movie goes a little bit, goes into the supernatural territory.
Yeah.
I loved it. Like, that was...
yeah, I mean, that's fair. That's valid.
Yeah.
It just, I liked it before that more.
Yeah, and I think I do too, but I also liked the part where she ripped off the guy's arm. I just was like, yes!
Yeah, it was a fun kill.
And I knew that she was going to burst through the wall, but like for some reason sometimes you predict something that's going to happen and you're disappointed with it, and sometimes you predict what's going to happen and you're like, yes, they nailed it. You know, like, and that's kind of the yes, they nailed it is where I fell on here, and that also may be why I'm a little bit higher on it, because that third act or the third section of this film works a little bit better for me. But yeah.
Well, I think there is a slight hint at the power and strength whenever she smashes Bill Skarsgård's character's head against the wall, because she pretty much smashes it like a pumpkin, like into oblivion.
Yeah, but it's still like, I mean, I believe different. That they like Michael Myers, they have crazy person strength.
Yeah.
right? Because she's like
Yeah.
dragging people in and out of cages and down the hallways and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and like jumping up things. But that's still like,
Smashing through
I
a
mean, that was
concrete
still
wall.
like pushing it for like believability. But I don't know, like after getting hit by the car and like just running around like being so strong, I don't know.
Yeah.
I just feel like it's a definite difference than
Yeah.
once she gets out of the house.
I do think in terms of horror, and maybe this happens with other horror movies too, and I'm just not really thinking about it, but kind of that third act, or at least from the car point on, like it kind of stops being a horror movie and then it starts being just like an action movie sort of. Not, maybe that's not quite the right term, but like an escape,
Or just like a thriller.
yeah, like
Thriller, yeah.
like we really lose all of that. Like basically I can relax as a viewer in the third act of this movie,
Because nothing's
Right.
going to jump out and surprise you, except for her jumping through the wall.
sure, but even then, like you said, that's coming.
Yeah.
Because any time a character in a movie is like, this couldn't possibly happen, it's
Yeah.
it's gonna happen sooner or later. But
Yeah,
But
well,
yeah.
like to me, a stronger third act would be like her in like being shot, running around in the darkness in this like abandoned neighborhood, and you just hear it in the darkness somewhere, and you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it never changes gear to that like action mode or like thriller mode.
yeah, I think
I like to me that would have been stronger.
I think the part I agree with you on is like busting through the wall. Like if she had just come in there into that
Or just,
space,
like-
because it's not like
Yeah,
it's
just like
impossible
found
to
her
get
way
in.
or like yeah.
Well, let's
But I get it.
go back, because I think it also factors in with like Justin Long's like arc, and also with the girl's arc. So I want to talk about that first part of it, if you guys, and then we can come back to this because I think I don't know. There's like a build up to it, I think, but so what I found that first like third, like to be so great, like before Justin Long shows up, right? And I also found that it was like, the difference between this is where the casting was great. Casting Skarsgård is maybe an obvious choice because he's not actually evil, or but I think he's a really great actor and I think he plays it really well. But I love this the way she has to examine like each step. She shows up. Does she go into the house? She goes into the house, like all these different elements that are happening. He makes the tea, and then also we're like suspicious of him. Like we're like, well, okay, so this is a horror movie. What is he going to do?
Yeah,
like
he's getting off Norman Bates vibes for sure.
Yeah, for sure. He's too friendly, And then, like in horror movies, when he reveals that something that's a nice coincidence, but in a horror movie, there are no nice coincidences. Like where he has seen the film that she is going to interview with the director of, an internship.
And he works doing the thing that she's interested in.
Yeah. And all that's really charming and fun, and you want to believe him, but it's a horror movie, so like I don't know about this. And then I also like the dynamics, the sexual dynamics, I guess is the right word. Between what a woman does and what a man does, and how they approach problems differently. I found that really fascinating. What did you guys think about this this first sequence?
I think it's great. I mean, that's mainly what like the trailer for the movie is, and I was hooked just on what they showed in the trailer, and I kind of liked the way that it kept developing, and we keep bouncing back and forth between starting to trust him and then not,
Sure, yeah.
and then there are ways that we go back to not trusting him that like I don't necessarily think of as a male that she brings up, like the fact that she doesn't drink the tea and then they bring it up.
She
I'm
didn't
like,
see him make it.
oh wait,
Yeah.
yeah, that's right. She was not around, and I didn't necessarily consider that. And
That's the thing we don't have to consider, like on a regular basis, yeah.
Yeah, so I enjoyed that, and I enjoyed the back and forth and the ride, I guess, of going back and forth. Mike?
Yeah, well, like I said earlier, I think the first, like, 2/3 of this movie is pretty much just like a masterclass in suspense and building, right?
Mm-hmm.
It starts out so slow, and we have these long conversations about what she does and what she's in town for and so on. We even have, like, a scene where she meets with this lady and gets the job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's like really taking its time, investing you in this character,
Yeah.
trying to build up the suspense, and then you playing like iffy on, you know, Bill Skarsgård's character. Like, okay, he's a little too nice.
Yeah. And I think you expected
then-
this to take one night, right? Like one day, because you know she's only there for a night, right?
Sure.
And so when we get to daytime, you're kind of like, oh, then you don't really know, right? Then you're
Sure.
a bit more uncertain of what's coming and when it's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a couple of things in there too. Like even before she gets locked in the basement, right? You know, but like she has that she wakes up in the middle of the night, her door's open, right? And Skarsgård is like screaming in his sleep, and they have like that weird moment. But like seeing it a second time, this is kind of what you were talking about, Justin, about how like there are things happening in the frame, and this is something I didn't notice the first time, but like when she goes in there, you can see the like basement door close behind her, you know, like when she's approaching Skarsgård and stuff like that, where, you know, there's these things that are happening all around. Or like when she wakes up in the morning and you see the devastated like city block that she is on, you know, like a lot of those are really great. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know if we can move on to the Justin Long section.
Go for it.
But
yeah,
just like the tone of that one, the switch, and we go back to casting again too. I think they're doing a bit of
Justin Long is the nice guy.
Yeah, of kind of what they did in most recently. I can think of like Promising Young Woman, where they cast like well-known, likable, nice guy actors for a reason.
Because someone who seems relatively harmless.
Yeah. So that is working for me a lot in this one. And, you know, I do think it's a bit surprising when we do realize he is guilty of the accusations that they bring up, you know, when we're first seeing him in the car.
Yeah, there was like a little while where I was worried. I was like, wait, you know, what are you, like, is he innocent? Like, what's happening here? He calls her a bitch pretty regularly, but other than that, there's like no evidence, you know, like, of what he's done. You know, we're from his point of view, you know. So I was a little worried there for a second, but yeah.
We don't really hear the other side, I don't think.
Yeah.
And until we hear him like confirm it,
admit it,
you know, to his friend in the bar. But we're spending all of that time, and I think one of the things where the comedy really comes in is, to me, this one, it lacks that suspense because we kind of already know, and we're just waiting for him to get in the situation. But
yeah,
I like that we're able to laugh so much. Like, I actually laughed out loud several times when he was measuring out the square footage of the house.
Yes.
And trying to add the basement.
So great. Yeah, that's the joke too. I think that, you know, that's like the punchline is like, when she first is confronted with this you know, dank hallway, you know, she's like, nope, I'm not going in there, you know. But like both the men, the first one's like, well, I got to see what's going on down there, and then Justin Long's character is just like, how much money am I gonna make off of this? And he's just like measuring it, and I think that's, you're right, it's hilarious.
Yeah, like
with Justin Long's character, he's entirely too selfish to be scared.
Yes, yeah, that's
like, nothing would ever hurt him. That's not possible for something to like be a danger to him.
Yeah, even the situation with the girl, like the actress who's accusing him, like, I'm sure
he's
in his
get out of
mind
it
he
somehow.
never thought that what he was doing was something that would harm him, because it's impossible.
Yeah,
you know,
he just kind of, you know, walks brazenly through life. I like how even though he sees like a camera and a dirty mattress in like a hidden room, there's no red flags. He's just like
there's like a bloody
around.
There's a bloody handprint on the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. And he'll like look at it and be like, oh, nasty.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And then start like measuring the room.
There's a
He, like,
moment of him
sits on the
looking at it.
mattress.
He's like looking at it and taking it in, and then that's kind of the moment where you're like, okay, guy, you have to understand that this is like super creepy now. And then it just like hard cuts to the noise of like the tape measure being pulled out. That's top level comedy in my opinion.
Yeah, well, so did we all see it coming whenever she goes back down into the basement to get him, and that she would get shot by Justin Long's character? Was that all on our... Because it was on my mind.
No, I don't think I saw that coming.
I think so.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I think I was with it at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I like how they use that as a vehicle to kind of fake us out for a minute there, and we actually think that like maybe Justin Long learned a lesson here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then just to pull out that rug at the last minute and like show what he's really he's just truly down to his core a really selfish coward, you know?
Yeah. Well, I love that, and that's kind of what I'm talking about. Is like at the end, you know, when he gives this confession, he's like, you know, maybe I've done bad things, but I'm not a bad person. Maybe I'm a good person that has done bad things, and all I can do is, you know, like, is try to make them right and move on. And then, you know, because everything else is so big and over the top, I think his like gaslighting or his confession is also big and over the top, or we're not to take it seriously. You know, does that make sense? And then I love the top of the water tower where he's just like, only one of us can survive, and he throws her down.
Throws her off. Jesus.
Yeah, just like immediately he, you know, does a face turn. And then I love, and at that point, I'm more on the mother's side, you know, like at the end than I am on his side. You know, like she just wants to protect and like take care of these people, you know, like she's been fucked up, you know, like Justin Long's more along the lines of the old guy that like, you know, was killing and raping these people.
Yeah, she's just a little like product of violence and incest that lives in a hole. You know.
Yeah. And I guess that's kind of the point of having these accusations and then having his confession, so that we as an audience know what really happened to him. Is that, you know, for the most part, I was like, okay, Justin Long can die. That's fine. And like, I don't mind seeing him being forced to like breastfeed from this woman or you know, feed from this like bottle or whatever. Like anything that happens to him at that point, I'm like, okay, that's fine.
Right.
And that's part of the fun of the third act too.
Yeah. I really I enjoyed it.
So yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
No, you go ahead.
I think the only thing that maybe I was like not 100% clear on, and maybe was open to interpretation, I'm curious what you guys thought, was the guy in the basement who's locked in, or not locked in, but he's just down there. I kind of got the vibe that he was being held captive a bit, but I could be wrong. But him killing himself, what did you guys read that as? Because it was a little unclear to me.
Yeah. I don't get the impression that he was held hostage. I get the impression that the mother, quote, was scared of him, because as soon as Justin Long went down that hallway and got right up against that dude's door, she backed away.
Oh, that's right. You're right.
Yeah.
And I think the reason he shot himself was because Justin Long was like, there's going to be cops over here any minute now. I'm out of here. I'm going to blow the lid off this thing. And he was like, oh, jig is up. I've been waiting for this.
Yeah. Was it that like whenever he tells him he's a monster, or was it like, because I don't know. Justin Long didn't necessarily seem to think he did anything wrong through the whole movie, but I don't know if that ever changes like once he's accused.
Oh, I think he knew he did something wrong. I think he just wasn't ready to admit it out loud.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do have, this is kind of, I guess this would be my one complaint, is kind of, I don't know exactly where the old man kind of fits in. One of the things the homeless man says is that it's been generations and generations like of incest is kind of how he describes it, is like a copy of a copy of a copy, and you get the mom. And I'm like, well, how many copies? Like, how long have they been down there? Like,
I think he's been down there since the 80s.
It's like 40, about 40 years, but
I don't know. The way it was presented makes me feel like
we
they've
don't
been
know
down
how
there.
old the mother is. The mother could
true.
be like 20.
yeah.
I guess, yeah.
Because he says that he had babies with the babies.
Sure.
And I assume they're eating the men, the boys.
Are they I guess, yeah. That's probably where I'm like, are they eating the boys? That would be...
Or getting rid of them.
Yeah.
It's like a real, like in Game of Thrones, like Craster's Keep. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Get rid of the boys, do your thing with the girls,
yeah.
make them your wives or whatever I don't know what a system is, but it's gross.
Yeah. I don't know if I didn't want to tackle that, but I had the same kind of question about like the logistics of how many generations of incest could create something so inhuman.
This. Yeah, I feel like it's hundreds of years that needs to create this. Incest
is more likely to do the opposite of making you like a gorilla
super
type.
Strong. Yeah,
yeah.
It's funny because I'm okay with her jumping through the wall and ripping the guy's arm off, but I'm like, wait a second, how many generations have they been down there?
Yeah, no, I had the same thought.
Yeah.
I mean, the dude's pretty gross, so the turnaround was probably faster than we want to.
Yeah, when we don't necessarily need to dive into it. I did enjoy I did enjoy his sequence as well.
Did you recognize him from The Mandalorian?
No.
Who does he play
He's
in The
the
Mandalorian?
dude that, spoilers for season 2 of Mandalorian, Bill Burr shoots in that one episode.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I remember that. I did not recognize him, but I was kind of in awe of the way that was shot and that sort of like super colorful.
Yeah.
Like,
it's like very David Lynchy feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very much. It like reminded me of somewhere between David Lynch and David Byrne, like True Stories, if you guys have seen that.
No,
I have not.
Okay,
Which I
then.
need to, because it's Houston, right?
It's Texas. I don't know if it's Houston, but it's something.
Texas for sure. Yeah. So what are they trying to say with the monster and Justin Long's character meeting? Are they saying they're both monsters? I mean, obviously they both are. I mean, like what exactly is happening there? What do you guys think?
Well, like on a like even slightly more pulled back level, the title of this movie, Barbarian, is fun because throughout the movie you get to debate who the barbarian is, or like what does barbarian mean,
sure,
and whatnot. And I think it kind of applies to them both equally.
Well, there's a spectrum,
sure,
and I think what we're to think is Justin Long is being confronted with like true horror and like true, like the worst case toxic masculinity, forcing yourself on women, like what the result could be. And I think he knows he's not that guy. So then he's like able to, condemn him. But then afterwards, after he shoots the girl who come back to save him, I think he's well aware of what he is. And I think in that moment, he probably believes he can change.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is he confronted with himself and he decides that he wants to change? I mean, like,
yeah, he sees more of himself than he probably ever would want to.
Yeah.
Even though he's still a far cry from like locking people in the basement and like living out your days there.
Yeah,
sure.
But I think he sees the result of violence and like the pain and generational pain it can create, etc. And I think he's ready to change. He's ready to, turn it all around. And then I think he's just incapable of doing so because he's just sort of a narcissist,
Yeah, he only cares about himself.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that they're equal levels of Barbarian, but I think there's just equal arguments to make.
Yeah, I mean it's a carefully chosen title for a reason.
Yeah, and then of course the other thing is that the guy in the basement, at the very least, and possibly Justin Long too, because he owns the house, are quite literally barbarians because the house is on Barbary Street. And in the same way that, people from Phoenix are Phoenicians, like someone who lives on Barbary Street could be a barbarian,
Well, that makes the mom is a barbarian at that.
Yeah,
as well.
the mom is also a barbarian. Yeah. And possibly the homeless guy too, but if he lives on the same street. I wasn't quite clear on that.
I did like...
Well, first of all, why would you hang out there if you were find a different neighborhood, homeless guy?
Yeah, it's like she runs around at night and then get out of there.
He's like, it's like she's never come up here in 15 years. It's like, oh yeah, but that's gambler's logic.
It only has
sir.
to change once.
Yeah.
And you get your arm ripped off.
Yeah.
Yeah. She comes out at night. She's coming out of that house at night. And then also, whenever you're trying to get the girl to not go in there, maybe don't be like, girl.
Yeah.
Little girl.
Yeah.
Don't
Don't
run
go in
after
that house. Be like, more specifically, be like, there is something living in the basement of that house. Do not go in there.
Yeah. You have to yell more specific things.
Yeah. Don't just run up at a girl.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't run up out of focus.
Yeah. That's not his fault.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Talk to the DP
He didn't know
about
he wasn't
that.
in focus.
He just knew he was on camera.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
don't
do
know.
like that part, and I'm maybe it's just knowing film and horror movies pretty well, but it's a bit telegraphed to me that guy's actually just trying to help her.
Yeah, I
Sure,
know. I was
yeah.
like, that guy's trying to give her a warning, but he's approaching this all wrong.
Yeah, yeah.
Let me ask you guys, because this is something that in the moment I was back and forth on, and I still don't know if it entirely worked for me. I think I've mostly forgiven it because of my major problem with the third act, which I call a major problem, but my complaint where, she becomes superhuman. But what about the conversation with the police officers? I tend to find horror movies that ask me to suspend my disbelief at certain conversations to be kind of annoying. Like if there's too many coincidences or whatever, and the idea that she would approach the cops and they wouldn't do anything almost seems like a leap too far, but also not. It's kind of played kind of down the line because she's also looks like a crackhead because she's been in a basement for weeks.
Yeah.
And she's in a crappy neighborhood.
Yeah, it's already that I don't think the cops like going into that neighborhood,
Right. So did that scene entirely work for you, or do you understand, because I was kind of back and forth. I was like, yeah, okay, this makes sense because of all the circumstances around how they're seeing her.
And also what she's saying. That's pretty crazy stuff.
Yeah, but also she could easily be like, this is my car right here in front of this house. This is my car, and there's another car clearly left here that's brand new.
How can she prove that, though?
I don't know, but that's the thing is
license plates.
It asks us to rely on the idea that these cops are that lazy and that, because you know what I mean? It asks us to maybe suspend that disbelief just a little bit too much, or do you disagree?
I think it was okay for me because I felt like the groundwork had been laid with, both her appearance and the neighborhood, but also just the knowledge that it was Detroit and how run down Detroit is. That's part of the world of the movie. And to me, it didn't necessarily register as these cops are being lazy and they don't want to follow up, but that they had bigger fish to fry than something that was in their mind not very likely to be valid because of the way that she looks. And
sure, I mean that's kind of where I ultimately land.
Yeah, they were getting the calls right about other stuff going on that they kind of had to they had to take precedent over this girl.
Shots fired or something like that.
So that's what I thought of more than they just didn't bother.
I think it also speaks to a little bit. So, she goes up, she's trying to do the right thing by hey, we need to go down here and get this guy out of there. There's something crazy is going down there. And why you don't go to the cops, why, if you look a certain way, you don't go to the cops because they're like, oh, really? If you want to keep going on this, we'll take you downtown and you can sleep this off. So you become the suspect, So I think maybe there's a little bit of social commentary.
Yeah, throw a little commentary in there just to.
Yeah.
Which I don't disagree with.
Yeah, I know. I ultimately, like I said, I come away with it, accepting it, and it didn't really become a problem. But while the scene was happening, I was like, I don't know. This might be played up a little much. I don't know, a little on the nose.
It was more anxiety inducing. Oh, come on, just listen to her.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah. So,
but yeah, I get where you're coming from.
yeah, the big question to me is, as far as Zach Kreger films go, did you like this or Miss March more?
I haven't seen Miss March.
I have.
I
you seen
have
Miss
seen
March?
Miss March, actually, and as someone who actually actively dislikes the whitest kids you know, I would say this is better, comfortably.
Yeah.
From my understanding, Miss March was kind of like not
Horrible.
Yeah, but it's also a thing they didn't have any control over it. It was like a thing that they were asked to do, type of thing.
Yeah.
You know, like a
Kind of like a
It's about on par with one of their comedy sketches, but
oof. Yeah. Well, it's a bit like Trey Parker and Matt Stone in Basketball, where it's like
yeah.
in some ways it
Except
kind
for
of gets
basketball's good.
Yeah, basketball is good. And I look back fondly on some parts of Miss March that make me laugh in hindsight, and I'm slightly tempted to revisit the movie. But not necessarily because of this, but just like at the time that Miss March came out, I think I was in the middle of really getting into movies and having a bit more of a closed off mind to super popcorny, cheesy, like comedy type stuff, or you know, like really like low effort things, and that felt low effort to me and like bad comedy. And so I don't know if I give it a fair chance. You know what I mean?
Sure. That being said, I'm pretty sure Zach Kreger hates Miss March as well. So,
Probably.
You know, like
Probably. But
yeah.
yeah. Anything else on Barbarian?
no, I don't think so.
I think this might be on my top 10 list. It's like up there right now.
Cool.
That's awesome.
I mean, it's certainly a good time. It's a ride.
It's a real fun ride. I like those like twists and turn, like especially with the narrative. You said like compared it to Psycho. You know, obviously Memento being a thing I really love. I like when narrative is weird and twisty, and when it works, especially.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that this is a crowd pleaser in a way that a lot of these like indie horror that comes out that like stick out in my mind are kind of like imperfect and flawed, and they're not really for everybody. Like I'm thinking of like Bone Tomahawk,
Sure,
and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like this is actually one where like I watch it and I'm like, oh yeah, everyone will like this.
yeah,
Yeah. If it's a bit like Jordan Peele's horror movies, I think, to an extent, versus things like The Witch or even like Hereditary or the Ari Aster, stuff that
which are great movies. They're just
it's popular and it's great, but
not fun.
there's gonna be plenty of people out there who just think they're probably like boring or something.
Pretentious or something.
Yeah. This I think really like walks the line between the two really well.
Yeah. One last thing from me. Is this the best song, smash cut to song, in a movie this year? Like the credit song.
Which was the credit song? Was it Don't Fear the Reaper?
No, it's something about a baby.
Oh, that's right.
I think Don't Fear the Reaper was an X.
It was an X, but there was another thing that I watched recently that the end credits were Don't Fear the Reaper, and I can't remember what it was.
Halloween Ends.
Was it Halloween Ends? Okay.
Yeah, because Don't Fear the Reaper is playing in the original Halloween on the radio.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that's fun. But anyways, okay, yeah. The song did make me laugh, Chris. You're right.
Yeah.
It was pretty good.
Okay. Is that the end of our review of Barbarian?
It is.
Yep.
Wonderful.
So,
Okay. So I guess next, just real quick, briefly, Chris was not on our last episode where we reviewed High and Low on our Casually Criterion episode. And he chose that film. And we had to review it without him. So briefly, before the end here, we wanted to throw it to Chris so he can give us a little bit of his thoughts on the film.
Yeah, I just listened to you guys' episode yesterday. Good job, guys. Even without me, it was still pretty good.
it was difficult.
Yeah.
We held it together, though.
Yeah. Mainly, I'm going to agree with you guys. I did talk about this movie a few years back, and I was, in fact, I think, Justin, you mentioned that you weren't sure where you'd heard it from, but you'd heard it from me, where like the second half is kind of, I wasn't into the second act when I watched it a couple years ago at the Alamo Drafthouse.
I remember when you walked away, I looked at your star rating on Letterboxd and scuffed.
Yeah, you did. Even during when we talked about it, you scuffed. And I kind of agree
again.
with you now.
Good.
Things change.
I unscuff.
Yeah. Unscuffed. It's really great. I liked the second half a lot more this time. It is. One of you guys mentioned Parasite. It's real hard not to compare Parasite because the house is always up on the top, looking down on everybody else. It's the rich and the poor, and
It's high.
yeah. I think,
so to speak.
I will say what I think is that first hour in High and Low, where we're basically just in the apartment, is like maybe some of the best blocking in the history of cinema.
It's so over the top, but like good at the same time.
It's like that and Barry Lyndon.
yeah,
Neck and
yeah.
neck.
It's just like just done so well, and then everything changes. Like the first hour is like a play to me. Because we basically, the cameras are set up from a certain angle. Like we have like the three walls. It's kind of like a sitcom, right? We have the three walls of the apartment. We don't ever look the other way because there's only three walls in the set, and it's a lot like a play, and it's all set up. And then all of a sudden we're like on the real streets of like Tokyo or Yokohama, I think, or I don't know where we are. I think it's Yokohama.
It's set in Yokohama. I don't necessarily know if that's where they filmed.
Yeah, but we're on like real streets and we're seeing the police, and like there's some really good like exposition that goes on for a long time, but is entertaining still. You're like on the edge of your seat, like listening to it. A really great set piece is the train sequence, kind of right there in the middle of the movie. And then you get like Toshiro Mifune's like moral, like, is he going to do the right thing or is he going to do the wrong thing? And, like, the selfish thing, and it's kind of the opposite of the Justin Long character in Barbarian. Anyways, I really like it. Anybody that hasn't seen it should definitely watch it.
Yeah.
The
first half is like the art house thing. Like when I'm watching the first half of that movie, I'm like, this is like the Criterion movie. Here it is. I get it.
Yeah.
And then
The first half is I'm watching the premise I was sold on.
Yeah.
And then the second half is like a bonus movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something I didn't
I
expect.
do think there can be like a bit of a jarring twist. You're like, oh, wait, I was watching something else and now I'm over here doing this. So maybe that was the reaction I had. And that was the second time I'd seen it when I saw it in the theater, but it had been a long time since I had first seen it. So you have this reaction like, oh, I'm watching this, and then all of a sudden it changes, and you're like, well, I like the other thing better. So yeah, anyways.
Yeah. Well, cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Glad we convinced you the movie's good.
I always thought it was good, but
You didn't like it, I believe, is what I remember.
Half good, you said. Half good, half
Worst Kurosawa movie.
half garbage.
yeah. Worst Akira Kurosawa. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm excited to do more Kurosawa, but I'm even more excited about my own Private Idaho. I talked to Joe Biden, and he's going to give me my own Private Idaho.
Okay.
Is that an inside joke or is that just a weird sentence? I don't know. I don't want to know. Don't answer.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. That's it for the episode, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, listeners, so much for listening. Of course, as always, thank you, Jake Wagner Russell, for doing our intro and outro music. If you want to hear more of his music, go to soundcloud.com/bopscotch.
Stay tuned to this feed, subscribe to this, whatever. Our next episode will be maybe Tar, maybe Decision to Leave, maybe The Banshees of Inisherin. I don't know. There's so many good movies in theaters right now that it really just depends.
We gotta wait. Banshees, I'm saying all three of us need to be here to talk about because we're all gonna love that movie, I think.
How dare you?
It's putting a lot of like pressure on it, isn't it? I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I won't be here next week, just FYI. So I look forward to what you guys decide to watch and then going to see that and listening to the episode.
Awesome. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening. We will see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.